There was quite a few articles that were all coming out at the same time. Articles in Politico saying that there was so much chaos at the Department of Defense that there's no way that Pete Hegseth survives this. There was articles where some of the people that were fired for leaking were trying to come out and saying, you've defamed us. We didn't leak anything. This is about something else because we stood up to you. And there's all these articles all hitting at the same time. It felt so coordinated over a holiday weekend that they're flooding the media with attack pieces against Pete Hegseth. Then you have today the White House coming out and saying that they back Pete Hegseth. It says the entire Pentagon is resisting him.
The president stands strongly behind Secretary Hegseth, who is doing a phenomenal job leading the Pentagon. And this is what happens when the entire Pentagon is working against you and working against the monumental change that you are trying to implement. Secretary Hegseth was nominated for this position because he is standing up for the war fighter, the men and women in uniform who are putting their lives on the line to protect our country and our homeland. And unfortunately, there have been people at that building who don't like the change the secretary is trying to bring, so they are leaking and they are lying to the mainstream media. We've seen this game played before. The secretary is doing a tremendous job, and the president stands strongly behind him.
And this whole story, to me, just feels very much like the first Trump term, when you put someone in at a entrenched bureaucracy, an entrenched federal agency, and they want to change things. They want to make it better. This is, remember, the Pentagon that hasn't passed an audit in 7 years, and they can't account for where all this money goes. And it's one of the biggest budget items in the government. And is it any wonder that all of a sudden, when they are trying to make real reforms, that they're going after the Secretary of Defense, the person chosen by President Trump to lead these reforms? We have a unique opportunity right now to see real reforms at the Department of Defense. And I just want to bring up what we discovered in our FOIA when they were training people at Fort Bragg that pro-life groups were terrorists. There was a slide that specifically said terrorist groups and was listing pro-life groups like Operation Rescue, National Right to Life, specifically saying
if you're watching on the screen, this is the actual slide. We didn't just decide to make this. This is the slide they were showing to your American military.
And we got this from our FOIA, the actual deck that was being presented.
Freedom of Information Act request.
That's right.
I try to spell everything out.
And so it even talks about people that are sidewalk counselors or crisis centers, something we're defending right now in Massachusetts through our Choice Begins Here campaign, as well as the lawsuit to try to shut down the government funding of these ads that the government's running saying don't trust crisis pregnancy centers or pregnancy resource centers. But all this goes because we found this out, and then we started to get information from the FOIA, and we see that there was a concerted effort, it feels like, within the Department of Defense to make this go away. And they said, we admit we made a mistake. The mistake was the top of that slide said terrorist groups. It wasn't a mistake to have them in there. It wasn't a mistake to talk about these groups in the context of terrorism awareness training. But just the slide heading shouldn't have said terrorist groups. But then it goes on because as you read this 100-page investigation report, we find out that the people that were interviewed on behalf of this said, no, they were hostile towards these groups. They didn't like them. They were telling you, be aware of these groups. And so that apology and saying that there was a mistake wasn't really an apology at all, in that more than almost 10,000 people that we know of had been trained on this. And this wasn't just a brand new training. This had been going on for years. So that type of stuff is still happening at the Department of Defense. And you need someone like Pete Hegseth there that we are drafting a letter right now to go directly to him, not just the low-level bureaucrats, not just the people that are entrenched that want to train our soldiers that Operation Rescue and pro-life groups are terrorists and you got to watch out for them, to our military. So we got to go to the top. And is it any wonder that that would be a friendly voice at the top of the Department of Defense, wanting to root out this kind of bad actor bias, calling pro-life Americans terrorists? When you have someone at the top that would be receptive to this, of course, you're going to see the sharks circling and try to attack, because it's not just this, it's every issue of corruption and malfeasance in the Department of Defense.
Hopefully the Trump administration is a little bit different, not listening to the media, not listening to their people who are pushing back on them to this point where they'll get bullied into making a decision that they don't want to make.
What we've seen is more coordination and better messaging in this second round to go into these bureaucracies and get things done. When you have a monolith like the Department of Defense with so many entrenched bureaucrats, and this is, once again, an agency, a department that can't pass an audit, you are going to have people there that don't like change and don't like restructuring. And so to me, this entire media swarm that came out over a holiday weekend where you were seeing headlines on every DC type media outlet about how bad Pete Hegseth is, it just felt so coordinated and obvious that the goal here was people inside the bureaucracy, the deep state, if you will, trying to push him out because he actually wants accountability there.
Yeah, look, I think your point on it feels exactly like the first term is exactly what I was thinking. This used to be a thing, right? The media would go after somebody and then there would be panic. And usually they're going after people that are effective. In Pete's case, they've never really let up. They just keep going after him. I know the feeling. And it doesn't matter, honestly. President Trump doesn't focus on that. He's not reading the New York Times or the Washington Post. All of these newspapers, by the way, they have paywalls. Raise your hand if you're paying for them. I'm not paying for them. You can't even click past it. And so I really don't think that it matters much. Pete just needs to stay focused on doing his job. He's doing a great job. The fact that he's losing some staffers is irrelevant, honestly. There are so many people that want to work there, that want to work for Pete. He'll have a pick of people. And, who knows why they're being let go. But one was already kind of talking to the media and talking about, inside information of chaos. And I think that's so typical of what people say. So in Washington, D.C., where I am now, I'm not always here. I don't always love being here, but I am here. And it's so typical of what this city does, which is try to talk about palace intrigue and gossip. But most of us know that we just ignore it. And I will say that most of our listeners are barely even hearing about it. It's good to confront it, but it is really just irrelevant gossip in Washington.
We are so excited to announce the ACLJ's brand new app, completely redesigned to provide you with the best tools available to partner with us at the ACLJ. You can watch the daily Seculo program, sign the petitions, customize your ACLJ membership experience, donate with the click of a button, and receive up-to-the-minute critical updates that the mainstream media can't censor. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to your phone's app store, search ACLJ, and click install. It's that simple.